Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is diverge. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or the ways this verb gets used. The first way you might hear diverge used is to mean to separate from a route and go in a different direction. Many times with this first definition, people think of set routes, plans, maybe no, they don't think of that. Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is diverge. Let's take a moment to look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear diverge used is to mean to separate from a route and go in a different direction. With this first definition, many people think of maybe a path, a trail, something that is marked, right? And leaving that particular route and going in a different direction. A second way diverge gets used is to mean to differ significantly from. So many times this is used in connection with opinions, theories, or beliefs around the way something works. You might also hear it to use to discuss an approach or a way someone works to solve a problem. A third way diverge is used is to mean to deviate from a set course. Okay? And a fourth way, to develop in a different direction. So you can see with many of these definitions, we sort of have something in mind, something planned, something set, right? And we're taking a different direction. If you can connect that with most of these definitions, I think it will help you remember the verb. Now, you might have noticed as I've been speaking already, you might have heard me use a long I in the first syllable here, diverge. But I also know I've used the schwa, the sound, the most common vowel sound in English, to say that, or to say or pronounce this word, diverge. And I just want you to know that both definitions are acceptable. It's perfectly okay to use either one. But what you should know is that this is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of our verb, we're going to drop the E and add ing to form diverging. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding the letter D, since this verb already ends in an E. Now our base verb, diverge, ends with a J sound, and J sounds are voice sounds. This means our ED ending is just going to make a D sound, and I'm not going to add an extra syllable as I say it. It should sound like this: diverged, or with that long I, diverged. Either way is okay. Now, much of the time, when you see the verb diverge, it's going to be followed by the particle from. And so on my screen here, I've got some notes explaining how we use diverge from, but you're going to see that it really keeps the same four meanings we've already discussed. So one way we use diverge from is to mean to separate from something and travel in a different direction. An example of this might be riders diverged from the trail and got lost, right? So they left the path. That's what's meant by there. The second way we've talked about diverge and diverge from, again, means to differ significantly. An example of this might be rent in San Francisco has diverged from every other big city in one key way. So here, this sentence, right, we're talking about how different rents can be in San Francisco compared to other large cities. A third way diverge from gets used is to mean to deviate from a set course. So here you might think of kind of making a plan and then going in a different direction or not following that plan. An example of this might be, despite their shared dreams, their lives diverged from one another after graduation. So sometimes this happens where you have two people who are like, we're going to be best friends, we're going to work in the same field and do the same kind of things, and they make this plan, but they leave that course. We're going to be best friends forever, right? So here, right, they have started to follow a different course with their lives. Last way diverge from gets used is, again, to mean to move in a different direction from something. An example of this might be, conversation diverge from the meeting's agenda. Right? So our agenda is our plan. Okay? So we had a set plan to begin with, and now people have started talking, and they're talking about different things, maybe things we didn't plan on discussing. Now, let's continue using our verb of the day. Today, we'll practice the imperative and the simple present. Let's start with the imperative. We use this verb tense to give a command. Okay? This is different than advice, but with the imperative, we're telling someone to do a particular action, or if it's negative, not do a particular action. And the imperative is very unique in English because we do not start the sentence with a subject. Right? The reason for that is our subject is implied. We think others can understand it. So if I'm speaking to one person, my subject is you, singular, right? And if I'm speaking to more than one person, my subject is you, plural. Okay, so to make a sentence in the affirmative, in the imperative, all I need to do is begin the sentence with my base verb, no special endings on the end. Maybe you've heard a teacher say something like, diverge from the text and connect to our earlier readings in your discussions. So maybe we had that set list of questions, things we needed to answer after we've read a particular story. Here, right, teacher's telling us, go away from that set list, right? And kind of see where the conversation takes us. Now, if you want to make a negative imperative sentence, you're going to begin with do not and then the base verb. You might also hear and see the contraction don't and then the base verb. That's in my example here. Don't diverge from the trail. Maybe that's a park ranger warning some people, giving them the command, right? If you're walking or hiking, right, do not leave the path. Now, let's talk about the simple present. We use this verb tense to talk about our habits and our routines. It's also common to hear it used in discussion with facts as well. And the most complicated thing to remember about the simple present is we have to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, I just use the base verb in the affirmative. But if the subject is he, she, or it, I'm going to add an S to the end of my verb. You can see that in my example. The US cryptocurrency policy diverges from the rest of the world's policies. So that's going to go back to that meaning of being different. If you want to make negative simple present sentences, again, we start with our subject. If the subject is I, you, we, or they, we use do, not, and then the base verb. Or the contraction, don't, and then the base verb. If the subject is he, she, or it, we use does not, and then the base verb. I do not add an S to the end of the verb in the negative. Here's another example sentence. The shows don't diverge from the novels. So here I'm saying they're not different. They're following the story. They're not going off in another direction. If I want to make a yes or no question in the simple present, I start with do or does. Then I have my subject and then the base verb. Again, I don't add an S to the end of the verb here. My last example. Does the media outlet's coverage diverge from others? Okay. So here in this particular yes or no question, again, I'm asking if something is different. Now, let's spend a moment looking at some words that are related to our verb diverge. And the first word we're going to discuss is the noun divergence. This can have a couple different meanings. One would just be the process or state of diverging, going in a different direction. An example of this might be their divergence from the established trails puts them in danger. Okay. So here, maybe a little worried that them leaving those established routes could somehow put them in a dangerous situation. A second way the noun divergence gets used is to refer to the difference or possibly a conflict in opinions, interests, wishes, something of that nature. An example of this might be the study found that partisan divergence on climate change continues. So here in the United States, this sentence is describing the two major political parties in the United States having very different thoughts on the subject of climate change. And we can see those differences by party. That's the word partisan there is indicating that. Now, another related word you might encounter is the adjective divergent. Again, this means to be tending to be different or develop in some different directions. An example of this might be the study looked at managers' divergent views on leadership development. So here, many leaders, managers, or supervisors in this case, have different opinions on how do you grow, how do you build leaders. And that study was focused on just that, those different directions and beliefs that people might have. The last word we're going to talk about today is the adverb divergently. This is describing something that's being done in a way that is different or that's becoming different from something else. An example of this. What makes ChatGPT different is that it's able to think divergently. We can see that adverb describing the verb think in that sentence. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.